learning management system which was promoted by HEC, or rather advised by HEC, which was MS Teams. And this was because it was a cloud-based system, and we found it effective. And then second thing we did, we asked our IT team to get our faculty members familiarized with the working of that LMS, so that kind of familiarization training started. And then we brought in our medical education team with Dr. Ahsan Sethi supporting our medical education team as a consultant for Baqai Medical University. And we started a few sessions with the medical education team and the faculty, in which we familiarized them with the different parameters of online teaching and how it can be effective. And then after going through about 6 or 7 of these sessions in groups of 30 or 40 each, and about engaging with about 300 faculty members or Raja educators, we started online teaching at Baqai Medical University on the 1st of June this year. So that was our experience. We are doing online real-time lectures, which are called synchronized, and then we make the whole thing available for students to do it in a recorded sense as well, so they can see the recording as well. Uh, Asan was very kind enough, and we introduced softwares like Kahoot, Socrative for formative assessment. So the whole thing was, we can engage the student in the formative sense so that they can really learn what needed to be learned. Now we feel that our experiences we need to share with everybody, and with our experiences and the problems that we are facing, we need to look at the next step, which is summative online assessment. So that's the basis for this webinar. I'm going to start introducing the panelists because I don't want to waste too much time. The first panelist I'm going to introduce is not in a particular order, just randomly, Professor Rehan Ahmed Khan. Just to give you Dr. Rehan's background, he's a professor of surgery at Rifa International University, a passionate laparoscopic surgeon, and a passionate medical educationist. He is the assistant dean medical education at that university and is visiting faculty at Lahore and Khyber medical universities as well. And recently, he's joined the PMDC Medical Education Committee for all these regulations and guidelines. Dr. Rehan, I know, is very passionate that he wants to bring about a change in the way medical school teach, so that we can achieve international accreditation for our graduates as well. So that is Dr. Rehan. The second panelist next to Rehan would be Dr. Usman Mehboob. I met Usman when Usman had a different appearance. I would like to say that a few years ago, in fact, it's a decade ago. Usman is an MBBS who's done also a master's in public health, and he's a PhD in medical education from 2014. He's director of the Institute of Health Professional Education and Research at the Khyber Medical University, and he's again visiting faculty at University of Lahore and Rifa International University. He is another one of his passions, which I understand, is editing, and he edits the advances in health professional education, and he does it online. He takes on the burden, and he produces good quality research material so that researchers understand what research is actually all about. And he's again a member of the medical education committee. Next in line is Professor Junaid Sarfraz. Junaid Sarfraz, again a general surgeon with a passion for oncology, breast oncology surgery, and again a passion for medical education, and a third passion which he himself has determined is administration. He's a professor of surgery at the Lahore Medical College and Institute of Dentistry, and is the Dean of School of Health Professional Education, at which comes under the National University of Medical Sciences, Islamabad. Plus, he's an adjunct professor of medical education at Khyber Medical University. Junaid Saab has been the former pro vice chancellor at the University of Lahore in 2013, and then he was the acting vice chancellor as well for a few months or years. I'm not sure. So, Junaid, please forgive me if I say it wrong. But that's Dr. Junaid. So he brings in a huge area of expertise, not just in medical education or in surgery, being a subject expert as the rest of the do, but also a bit of administration as well. My fourth panelist, who is a very dear friend, one of my ustads in medical education, is Dr. Moin, Dr. Syed Moin Ali. He's a Dow graduate, as I recall, a year senior to me. He's done his MHP, and he's director of medical education at Jinnah Sindh Medical University. He is again on the panel of advisors for the WFME for Pakistan. You'd be surprised to know Moin and Baqai Medical University go a long way back. Uh, Moin is the first person who started problem based learning at Baqai Medical University in 1995 after he did the initial 6 weeks course at Maastricht. After that, he left for not greener pastures but different approaches, and he joined College of Physicians and Surgeons, where he started with Dr. Sayyid Kausar Ali and Dr. Lubna Beg, the first program in medical education at a diploma level at CPSP, which is still running. The After that, Moin in 2013 did his master's from Maastricht, and then he was appointed director of medical education in Taif. He spent a number of years there in Saudi Arab, but came back in 2009 to start the first MHP program for Dow University of Health Sciences, the first batch which I joined, and we 14 graduates from that batch. Moin put in the real hard work, Dr. Kausar, Dr. Lubna, and others. Then he permanently came back and joined Janasin Medical University, where he started another MHP program. So that is the panel of expertise, a galaxy of stars. Not all the stars, but we will one day be going through all of them. So that I think is the base for our questions. Uh, Not in any particular order, but I think the particular order will be I'm going to start asking questions from each of our panelists. And I would like to uh, base the questions on their experiences which they faced during this COVID period, before that, and the challenges that they see that is facing us now. All the medical educationists, the educators, the students, the parents, and the management. Now, I know the stakeholders are pretty much out there, but at least we have the educationists, a few of them, and a majority of the educators here. And we will talk about the perspective of the students as well. So, basically, I would request Dr. Usman Mehboob, starting from north of Pakistan, to take 10 minutes to highlight us about these questions. Dr. Usman, the floor is yours.
Uh, Thank you, Dr. Shams, for the introduction and for the questions. And thank you, Baqai Medical University, for inviting me to share my thoughts and the challenges and the issues and how we are managing them. So one of the issue that we are facing, the first question is that the challenges that we are facing regarding the summative assessment. The first thing, now I look at it from sort of a triangle, that there are three angles to this issue and challenge. The first one, as medical educationists, we always are advocating for quality. And that is something we actually advocate, and we ask our colleagues not to compromise on it. And the second thing that comes in is the legal issues, the legality of it. And as public sector university, our university actually looks after for all the healthcare institutions in the whole province. And we have 117 affiliated and constituent institutions. So you can well imagine the diversity, starting from DI Khan to Abtabad to Swat, Dir, and all these areas. So the university spans around 526 kilometers area, and it covers the institutions across these different wide regions. So that's why it's extremely challenging to devise an assessment strategy and an online teaching strategy for all these institutions, because uh, this is so contextual, and that's one of the reasons that we are struggling a lot. And the third issue that we are struggling with is, I think, the financial aspect as well. And this financial aspect, although probably is not directly affecting anything, but there is more of a fear of it, and also that it would be required for a good quality online assessment. And as public sector university, we struggle a lot pushing the finances, especially when things have changed. The financial year is close to ending. So on one hand, we have been asked that the financial year is about to close. And on the other hand, the era of summative examinations, it's about to start. So from where shall we bring the budget for good quality online assessments. So these are the issues that we are struggling with. The next one is probably the guidelines and how we are managing it. So one of the issues, one of the ways to handle it was that first we looked into our resources, how good are our resources of information technology and ICT, and we realized that they are not good enough to cater for all these institutions. So then another option was, is there an outsourcing option available for a credible, with a credible body? And that's again we are struggling with, because we cannot find a credible body that can cater, and the costs that are involved, as you can imagine, that we have thousands of students. So uh, then again the issue of internet connectivity and all those are associated with it. There was this option of going for the open book exam, and that's a good one. But again, the question comes in, because we as healthcare sciences, we have a lot of clinical component that we have to cover, and open book covers the cognitive component, that's fine. But then covering for the skills and clinical component, that is an issue that we are struggling with. So we are looking into ways of how to handle it. Some of the SOPs have been developed for the laboratory sessions, because biochemistry, anatomy, physiology, these labs are not that exposed. And with proper SOPs and guidelines, students can be allowed for these. But again, for clinical component, there is an issue. One of the suggestions that has been strongly advocated by some of our colleagues, and when I talk of colleagues, I mean the directors of institutions, the principals, the deans, and the professors. So one of the strong suggestions that came was that, if we remember, probably I was the one who was from the last batch who had their professional exam together. So we used to have our MBBS first year and second year exam together at the end of second year. So that used to be called the first professional exam. Later on, it changed from the next year. I think from 2002 or so, it's changed. But so one of the suggestions that came up was that why not to have the ENT or I paper in final year as we used to have previously, or we can have the clinical exams next year when the situation may settle down. So that was again, so that suggestion is still there on the table. And another committee, so we have a lot of committees in our university, the online education committee, the online course review committee, the deans and principals committee, the directors committee. So every committee, and it's extremely challenging actually to coordinate amongst all these committees, because every committee comes up with its own suggestions. So we have this thing on table as well, and probably we are also working on. Dr. Rehan and is leading a team to develop the Pakistan Medical and Dental Council policy for online education. Uh, the next one that we are the next question is the challenges that we are facing regarding summative assessment. And I think the biggest challenge that we all are struggling with is the fairness of the exam. So everything revolves around the fairness. If you want to go for the camera, if we are asking about the internet connectivity, and if we are asking the students to put camera at some specific position, it all comes towards the fairness. And the second challenge that comes is the technology support. Adaptations that have been asked, that what adaptations have we been looking into? So one is again the open book, and then some of our colleagues, we have already tested the traditional methods of MCQs and all those things with changing the MCQ patterns. So in some colleges where the students probably were more from the peripheries, because in KP, just like probably our colleagues from Punjab, they don't have this issue of quota seats, but we in the KP, we have a lot of issue of these quota seats, and students are from peripheries, from tribal areas, from Fata region, from Swat, Dir, Bunair, DI Khan, the areas that genuinely have issues of internet connectivity. So that's something that we are looking into. So for those institutions, we, some of the colleges, they did allow extended time period for exam. Probably instead of just traditional 3 hours exam or paper, they allowed for maybe 5 6 hours or maybe 24 hours. But again, that issue of fairness popped in, and unofficially some of the colleges, our colleagues, they told us that even more of the 50% of the students, they had copied the questions from each other. So that's again the problem that we are struggling with. Regarding the training guidelines, so I think training on all the available software, as Dr. Shams just said, that we trained our faculty on the available softwares. So that is one thing. Then another is the format and design of the exam. Which exam are we going to go for? So even today we were discussing the open book exam, that are we going for it in the Khyber Medical University institutions, all the institutions. So some of my colleagues, they said that, I said that how we are going to train the faculty of 117 institutions in such a short time for open book exam. So, but some of our colleagues, they have already, who have the capacity, internal capacity within their institution in education. So what they have started,
Exam or paper.
and then I think the third thing that I have written, that's something, training for ethics, professionalism, and sort of higher calling on these online education, because I don't know how we can ensure the fairness up to, I mean, 100% fairness. So that's not possible. So, but is there anything that we can do for professionalism, ethics, and this sort of training? So that's something I'm more concerned about. So these are some
Thank
of my
you.
thoughts.
Thank you, Usman. Really, really wonderful that you shared your experiences with us. I won't summarize. Just for the participants, you can write your questions in the chat box, and Dr. Ahsan Sethi is looking at those questions. I'm looking at those questions, and we will summarize those questions and ask them to the panelist again. So the questions can be written. There's also a link for the Facebook if somebody can't join here, because there are over 100 participants now. I'm going to move on and ask Dr. Moin Ali, because I'm going to move from direct from the north of Pakistan to the south of Pakistan, and then we'll crunch somewhere in the middle. So I'm going to Dr. Moin Ali the same questions, but from a different perspective, from the not just the perspective of the educationist, but the perspective of the educators, and if possible from the perspective of the students as well. Dr. Moin, I know it's a tough ask at the moment, but I think you are well experienced to answer those two in those two parameters, please.
I'll try. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Shams, and thank you to Baqai Medical University for considering me for this webinar. It's a great pleasure to be back always at Baqai, and lovely to be back amongst friends at any excuse. The challenges that we faced in our institution first was of being unprepared. कोई तैयार ही नहीं था कि ये एकदम से ये मसला आ जाएगा, तो उसमें बहुत ज़्यादा आई थिंक एचईसी की हेल्प मिली, एचईसी की गाइडलाइंस मिली, और एचईसी के प्रेसिडेंट के जब उनकी मीटिंग हुई वाइस चांसलर के साथ, and he gave guidelines and HEC issued those guidelines, so that gave us some time के अच्छा HEC को कोई जल्दी नहीं है, it's not now. HEC said you can halt your classes, but spend time in planning. So we took up that challenge and we started planning कि हमारी फैकल्टी तैयार है नहीं है, हमारे सिस्टम्स तैयार है नहीं है, और हमारे स्टूडेंट्स को क्या होगा, बिकॉज JSMU इज द बिगेस्ट यूनिवर्सिटी इन सिंध, और हमारे स्टूडेंट्स इंटीरियर सिंध में बहुत होते हैं, इंटीरियर सिंध चले गए थे, बहुत सारे स्टूडेंट्स हमारे कश्मीर के होते हैं, वो कश्मीर चले गए थे, और इन रिमोट एरियाज में कनेक्टिविटी का बहुत इशू होता है. So what we really had to grapple with was the infrastructure and the connectivity and the readiness of the student in teaching. Because everybody is an animal of habit, students didn't like even asynchronous classes at the start. Then they adapted to them, and then we started doing synchronous classes after some faculty development. And then the students did not like synchronous classes. But then slowly and gradually, everybody adapted to this online teaching, And then we started some formative assessment slowly and gradually in our lectures. We started introducing tutorials which were very interactive. So teachers came to know that interaction is possible in online teaching. Now, where summative assessment is concerned, we are going to use Moodle probably. But the good thing is that we realize after a lot of discussion, because based on HEC guidelines, we developed an online academic council. Um, we realized that not everything can be tested through virtual system. And this is not on-campus online testing. This is remote online testing. There's a difference between online and remote, or on-campus and remote. Since this is remote testing, you have to be careful about many things. So you've got to develop policies for contingencies, like what will happen if there's a power failure at the university level. Anything is possible in Pakistan. What will happen if students face power failures or internet shutdowns? So those policies have to be thought through and developed, and that is what institutions probably across Pakistan are doing or have already done. And we did the same thing. So a think tank has to be developed. Now, there's a lot of strategic planning that has to go into this, and this think tank has to be multifaceted, having multiple people from within the university, outside the university. For the first time, our faculty realized that the information technology department is not meant for fix-it solutions for hardware and software problems. But those are people you have to sit with and talk to and work with to solve your academic issues. So we started working with the IT for academic purposes of what solutions. For example, we have 800 students appearing at the same time in an online theory exam. We have no essay questions, we have only MCQs. So what will the system be able to bear it? Is a server capable of dealing with that? Is Moodle capable of dealing with that? So these issues have to be dealt with. What if situations have to be considered by the university, by this think tank? And then we got feedback from students, because students are so important. And we had to develop policies for what will happen to our remote students who do not have access easily. And that, according to HEC criteria, according to international criteria, those policies have to be disseminated. You've got to ensure, it is the university's responsibility to ensure that everybody has received those policies and they've read them and they've understood them. So that took time. Policy development, not just policy development, but policy dissemination as well. Then we also realized that what will happen to OSCE. Sure, there is a virtual OSCE, there is a video OSCE in the world. There are so many softwares which can deal with many things, but at the end of the day, we need to realize that there are only so many constructs that you can assess online. There will be some constructs, like Dr. Usman just said, that there will be some construct, there will be some issues which you cannot assess online. Physical examination, procedural skills, you can't do them. You can see people doing it, but in many cases you will not be able to. You just will not be able to do it. How can you ask a final year student to palpate a person who has actually an enlarged liver? So we've got to realize the limitations of this system. Every system has limitations. I think Usman's idea has a lot of weight, that we probably will have to consider postponing some component of our exams till things are possible on campus. That's a major thing. And then preparing students, it's a validity issue also. Preparing students for the exam is a very important thing. Mock exams are so important. The students will get used to it. The system will be tested. Faculty will be tested. Everybody will know. So before jumping into a professional exam, we will also try, we are in the process of developing a mock system where you test the system and you run it through all those. Our one batch has about, of MBBS is about 800 plus students. So we will test them on, test the theory on that. OSPI will be tested. Of course, all of these will be checking cognition, higher cognition, lower cognition, besides the issue. But they'll be checking cognition. Issues of professionalism, ethics, again, they can be tested. Some components of them can be tested online, others cannot. So I think universities have to develop a think tank of multiple people, plan properly, and then learn to invest in information technology. The finances have to be redirected, rerouted to invest in software and hardware development, in developing the IT people's capabilities, in developing the faculty's capabilities to deal with this virtual system of education. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you, Moin. Really, you've highlighted points which certainly come across as common as well, but different in the sense that every institution is dealing with its own problem, but the commonality of a lot of things are there. So we'll stick to the commonalities and we'll move on to Professor Rehan. We're going to shift again north. Uh, and there's another reason for asking Professor Rehan, because he has been, I'm not saying that others haven't been, been trying to innovate with software use, which a lot of educationists were not familiar with, were familiar, were not familiar with the inner workings. And also, I would like Dr. Rehan to highlight these issues in the same parameters, but the perspective of bringing in how to bring in softwares and what are the limitations as well. Dr. Rehan, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shams, and the team of uh, Baqai Medical University who provided me this opportunity. I will start with that what preparations we already had when COVID-19 pandemic started. So the first thing was that the university was already using Moodle. So we already had a system in place in which we were sparingly doing online assessments for low stakes. Um, so there was a smaller ground already available on which we can build uh, a firmer way to establish the online assessment. But the first thing which we did was to decide that are we going to teach online synchronously and do the assessments as well. So yes, the higher administration in our university was completely clear on this, that we have to do that. Then we obviously started looking towards the Higher Education Council and PMNDC, that what should be the guidelines. So the Higher Education Council guidelines were distributed to the university, which clearly stated that no student can be promoted to the next class without a proper assessment. And if you go through the HEC guidelines, they clearly state that you have to uh, adopt either newer methods or use previous methods to assess the students. The method which is being favored by the HEC is either open book exams or essays, and then they say you can do assignments and then the MCQs. With MCQs, they had this problem of which Dr. Usman earlier mentioned, was fairness and honesty. So to counter that thing, fairness and honesty, we have been asking our students for online proctoring. Online proctoring can be done through a company, or it can be done even at your own institute level. So for example, we ask students now that they put in an extra mobile or a iPad or any other gadget through which we can see their desk on which they are working. and then the rest, obviously, they take the exam on the Moodle itself. So when we started training our faculty first. So the whole faculty was trained on Moodle, both how to use its teaching platform and then how to make online MCQs. We even basically made it very easy for them to let them know that how with a click of a button they can actually upload 200 MCQs if they are made in a MS Word. So we tried to make things easier for them. And then we also trained our students. We started with, as you may not be aware, but in RIFA, we have low stake, mid stake, and high stake assessments. For practical purposes, for all other universities, low stakes would be the internal assessment or the continuous assessment, whereas mid stake can be taken as a sent up and high stake as professionals. So we started with low stake assessments. So all departments, they started taking low stake online assessments. Initially, we had variable results. From student perspectives, they said that we have low bandwidth of the internet, we cannot connect onto the internet, or the server load at times was so high because the whole university was on it that the Moodle crashed. But slowly and gradually, these problems, they started getting sorted. We had a better server, so this issue was resolved. Then we, you know, categorically asked students that this is their responsibility to have a good internet connection and a gadget which should be available to them, because it's just like, in normal days, if you say that I missed a bus or I cannot come to the school because it wasn't available to me. So we said, if you are not able to take a test because of low bandwidth connection or unavailability of the gadgets, then we can take your exam based either on a take home book exam, because there are two types of open book exam. One is timed one and other is take home. And with this is specifically allowed by HEC. Or we can then send you assignments in certain time. So we had the backup as well, the backup plan. One of the burning issues which I would like to touch upon is the psychomotor skill assessment or online OSCEs. You see, when we talk about online OSCEs, this is not only psychomotor skills. OSCEs or OSPs are about, assessing the information giving, information taking, complex problems, soft skills, and then yes, psychomotor skills as well. So what we have started doing is that we, for this part, are now starting or being start in clinical rotations. We have started. We do online vivas. So, for example, if I am going to take an online viva or a long case of a student, I become a patient. The student takes history from me. Then he asks me pertinent question about the examinations. I know he cannot examine, but he does ask pertinent questions. And then I ask him questions which you will ask in a long case or in a structured viva. This is not the ideal situation, but this is what we can do at the moment. And we are keeping this in mind that once this COVID situation is over, the skills which have not been taught and not been assessed will be assessed and will not promote our students eventually without that assessment. But we also don't want that we create such a long backlog that the time of our students and the institution is wasted. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rehan. Really appreciate it. You brought in another aspect, which is online proctoring. Um, and software use for online proctoring as well. So that is an issue which has been touched upon, the ethical dimensions of how we will do physical examination, and the uncertainty of how long this period of COVID will last. We don't know. None of us knows. So this brings me to Professor Junaid. And the reason I think I'm going to ask Junaid Saab specifically is the obviously he's going to share his experiences with us, but how higher management would look at all these issues, because we've heard from two public sector institutions, which is Khyber Medical University dealing with the whole of KPK, JSMU, which is the largest in Sindh at the moment, dealing with 8 constitute and affiliated institutions. And what would you look at being part of NUST, what issues would you think about, and what solutions would you come up with these impossible problems? Thank you, Dr. Junaid.
Thank you, Dr. Shams, and thank you, Baqai University. Just a small correction. Currently, I'm working as the Registrar and Professor of Medical Education in National University of Medical Sciences. And the National University
Okay,
of Medical
sorry.
Sciences. No, that's quite all right. We always, we hear all the time mix up nums and nust, so that's quite all right. And National University of Medical Sciences is unique in Pakistan because it transcends provincial borders. So we have affiliated institutions all over Pakistan, in Sindh, in Balochistan, and in the Capital Territory, as well as in Punjab. Now, like Professor Rehan said, we were already using Moodle in National University of Medical Sciences when the COVID crisis came up. And I must commend the efforts of the Chairman, Higher Education Commission, and the way he handled is still handling the COVID situation, and the frequency with which the various guidelines are coming in from the Higher Education Commission Pakistan. They have been extremely supportive to the universities, at least to NUMS. And what we did immediately was to set up an online academic committee. And we included the Director QA and all the heads of the various academic programs in that online academic committee. In fact, I'm coming from one of the meetings directly to this webinar. And another interesting thing about NUMS is that we not only offer the tread-of-the-mill medical and allied health sciences programs, but interestingly, we are also offering certain social sciences programs. Now, what we discuss in the online academic committee is very program-specific context-related aspects of how to conduct our education within this scenario, and how that assessment would be tailored for each individual year of each individual program, whether it's the hardcore sciences MBBS BDS program, or whether it be the social sciences programs. For example, for social sciences programs, today we made a decision that those programs, the assessment will continue through an open book, high level, cognitive level assessment, which will then be further tested through online real-time viva voce examination. We have already conducted online assessment for various admissions that have been taking place over the last couple of months in the National University of Medical Sciences, and we have done that through Zoom. And again, we have utilized the concept that Professor Rehan alluded to, that of virtual proctorship, and ensuring that we can actually observe our students during the process of that online assessment. Now, Zoom is not the only software that we can use for the purpose of conducting these online assessments. There are so many other softwares available. You just Google them up, and Professor Ahsan and even Professor Rehan would be able to, they will be able to inform us much further about those softwares. But we have been developing through our the digital technology department customized softwares for conducting various programs, and those are customized to deal with the various aspects of individual programs and the requirements of the various head of departments. There are issues, and those issues pertain to both the management and administration of these online education and assessment, as well as to the conduct and the requirements and the challenges that the students are facing. Our students are spread all over Pakistan, and some of them do not have internet connectivity. But as at the level of the administration, we are trying to bring all our institutions together. So we have regular coordination committee meetings, and we invite all the medical education departments heads and their administrative heads of the various institutions to come up and weekly submit reports how their online education is continuing. And this majority of the institutions are able to connect to their students synchronously, some asynchronously, and there are only about 1 or 2% of the students that we have not been able to connect even asynchronously, so they do not have internet connections at all, those at remote areas in Gilgit-Baltistan, for example, or in Balochistan. Another important aspect is to develop those faculty development programs that Professor Rehan and other panelists have already described, to ensure that the faculty is aware of the challenges that are present in this current scenario, and also to develop certain online tutoring programs for students to mitigate those challenges and to make them comfortable to get that online education, and also to sit in those assessment programs. We have already issued our date sheets for the online supplementary examinations for first year BDS and the first and second year MBBS. Now, they would be largely cognitive assessments and would not involve a psychometric, psychomotor skills assessment. But we are already developing plans how to incorporate psychomotor skills assessment and attitude and other assessment within our online arsenal of assessment. So the considerable work is continuing, and I think the important thing for the administration at this point in time to do is to get all the heads of departments and various heads of various institutions together and listen to their challenges, listen to the challenges of the students, identify what those challenges are, and then come up with solutions that are feasible, that are practical, that are contextual, and that can really, that can be meaningful. So not come up with solutions that are impossible and that would obviously frustrate the system and frustrate departments and people. And that's not what we want to do. We want to encourage both the faculty as well as the students and the administrators to come together and find solutions in this difficult scenario. But education must continue, and it should, and it has.
Thank you, Professor Junaid. Really appreciate it. So, two things which I gather from all four panelists is one, from the start, it has been thought about all the stakeholders. So, what we technically call a SWOT analysis, continues in the back of our minds. What are our strengths, weaknesses, what opportunities are created, and quality assurance has been also kept in mind, that no students, even the 1 or 2% Dr. Junaid alluded to, are not left behind, even if they're sitting remotely in Gilgit or Balochistan, where they not have access. So solutions also were thought by Rifa University for this problem as well as for others. So the quality assurance aspect also has to be taken into account. We still have 5 minutes before I hand over to Ahsan, because Ahsan has been noting every question that has been put in the chat box. Anything that any panelist would like to add at the moment for the next 2 minutes? We have 2 minutes from the panelist. They would like to add after hearing Professor Junaid.
I think I just missed one point. I think the feedback from the students, like HSC has requested universities to gather, is very important. And not just gathering the feedback, but actually getting back to them and informing. There are certain things which are beyond the control of the university. We can't provide internet access to students in remote areas, but we can come up with certain out-of-the-mill solutions. Like HSC said, that we can actually send them CDs through mail, perhaps, that they can that could be part of asynchronous learning as well. But what we have also offered to the students in various semester programs is that for no additional cost, except for obviously for time, they can freeze these semesters till that time at which they are comfortable to come back to the university if they're not happy with online education, and then they can recontinue the studies.
Thank you, Dr. Junaid. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Any thoughts from any other three of the other panelists on anything that has been said till now before we move on to the actual question answers put up by the participants? Dr. Usman, any thoughts from your side?
Sir, I think pretty much everything has been discussed, and all the issues and the way different institutions they are dealing with it. And I think the message is quite clear that one shoe does not fit all is actually how we should be handling. It's very contextual, as Dr. Junaid has mentioned. And that's the reason that we are struggling with that, because we are used to having a uniform, homogeneous policy. which in this situation probably is not working. So that's why we are learning new things. So it's also new for us. We are also on a learning curve, and every day a new suggestion or a new issue comes up. And as Dr. Junaid said about the students' feedback, so I don't know, somehow many of the students have my cell phone number and my email, and I keep on receiving a lot of suggestions from them. And most of their suggestions, I think, they are regarding that you should not be having the exams and things like this. So we also need to be very careful about the students' feedback, that what is on the back of their mind when they are giving us their feedback, and what are the things that we should consider. Because on the faculties and administrative, and I can see a lot of effort. I mean, right now, more than 80 medical education colleagues, they are sitting right now to find solutions for their students. So we can see a lot of effort on our part. So probably the same is something that we also expect from our students. And unfortunately, I do not see that sort of motivation from our students' end.
Thank you, Dr. Usman. So another point which I think needs to be enunciated at this point is we need to find relevant local contextual solutions. One shoe does not certainly fit all, and we can't have a rich man's solution for us poor people. So even the softwares, with apologies to anybody who feels offended, the software has to be available so that can be used easily by everybody. I'm going to move on to Dr. Ahsan Sethi. Dr. Ahsan Sethi, just to introduce, not as a panelist, but as somebody who's, we worked closely for the last 2 months together. He's a dental graduate and he's done his master's in public health, and then he did his PhD in, again, medical education. He's been a passionate medical educationist who's trained with, part of with me for the Baqai Medical University faculty for this COVID readiness period. So Ahsan is going to take in the questions and ask the questions to each panelist or as he thinks appropriate, so that the questions from the participants are answered. Thank you, Ahsan.
Thank you very much, and I would like to welcome all the panelists again. And it was amazing hearing from you about your experiences regarding online assessments. I've collected a few questions. First question, which came at the very end, about the role of Pakistan Medical and Dental Council. So we recently know that a medical education committee has been constituted, and I think there is some work done on online education. So, Dr. Rehan, my first question is from you. Would you like to spill some beans on what's the progress regarding Pakistan Medical and Dental Council regarding online education and assessment?
Thank you, Dr. Ahsan. As you have introduced um, uh, the secret that we are working on developing online teaching and learning and assessment guidelines. It's a team which I'm leading at the moment. And what we are planning to do, along with me, I have Dr. Rahila and Dr. Waqar from PIMS, Dr. Rahila from Rifa Institute. And what we are deliberating at the moment is that we plan to first make the standards of online teaching and learning. We already have 12 standards of PM&DC. We are going to add the 13th standard. This standard would also be used to obviously evaluate a medical school. The standards would be basic and quality standards. The basic standards would base on that what are the minimum requirements that each medical school, college, or university should have, that they would be allowed to run a online teaching and learning assessment system. And then quality standards would address the standards of excellence. So that's the first thing which we have started working on. Then the next thing is the guidelines, which will include the policies and procedures that how to implement these standards in their respective medical schools and colleges, taking into account the context from knowing the fact that there are universities which have more than 100 medical schools and there are universities which have only one medical school. So this is what we have already started, and we're also keeping in mind that our guidelines and standards are in line with Higher Education Commission, so that there is no disparity between the two main higher institutions of the country. So this is what we are doing. Thanks, Ahsan.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rehan. My second question is from Dr. Junaid. Sir, the question is, how can we evaluate students' engagement in an online session? Is there any processes you are following for that to ensure their attendance, their engagement, and their sense of belongingness?
Well, if you're talking about synchronous real-time online sessions that are being conducted here at NUMS, everybody logs in. They're present on the screen. Then just logging in does not really mean that they're actually engaged, but the lectures, just like in like face-to-face teaching, it is ensured that they are interactive, so the tutors interact with these students, and then not just that, but this actually has encouraged development of a lot of dashboards and various programs in our learning management systems, and we sort of monitor those dashboards as well as to how much students are engaged in there as well, and they're interacting with each other, and the tutors are actually supervising that activity on the dashboards as well. So those so as far as those lectures are concerned, the tutors continuously try to engage all those students, and we ensure that the class is manageable for those online classes, even if we have to divide a particular cohort into multiple groups and then conduct the same session for multiple groups and then bring them together to a single dashboard. We do that for where the cohort is larger than required.
Thank you very much, sir, for your comments. Anyone else would like to add anything on this before I move on to the next question? Dr. Moin, आप कुछ कहना चाह रहे हैं?
Thank you, Ahsan. I would like to share our experience where initially in the basic science section, out of a faculty of 59 members, we had only one person who knew something about interaction with students online. So that gentleman was tech savvy from before, and he was a dentist. So very popular teacher, young gentleman. So he started it, and he got very good feedback because the attendance in his class was up to the maximum. But then we started faculty development in interaction during synchronous teaching. And that was, we call it tele-enhancement sessions, where we give one-to-one feedback to faculty members in what they can do during their lectures. So they show us their lectures, video recordings, and then we tell them what they can do, what are the things that they can practice. And we've had good feedback from faculty who have tried those things, and they've gotten feedback from the students. So I think faculty development is very important in enhancing the capability, and we've done that with good effect.
Thank you very much, sir. Faculty development is indeed very important. Next question is from Dr. Usman, because you are at Khyber Medical University, and Khyber Medical University have colleges spread over across the KP province, from Bannu, DI Khan to main city of Peshawar. So in areas with poor connection and accessibility issues, how are you planning to do their online teaching, or there any other forms of online teaching learning sessions? And what is your plan for assessment in such areas, or in such areas?
Thank you, Dr. Ahsan. First is regarding the teaching of these peripheries. Some of our colleagues from the private sector colleges, what they did was that they put in a lot of effort. They sent CDs of the teaching, as Dr. Junaid said. So they sent CDs to the students in Kashmir and to these students in Swat or in Dir or in these Fata areas. So that was one of the ways of communicating with the students. Another one was that some of them, the students said that we have poor connectivity. So I received some of the messages of the students from one of the colleges that we have poor connectivity and our college is having the online sessions. So we are struggling with the attendance. So I think the main issue for them was the attendance. What the college did was that all the videos, same as we have a recording session right now going on, and this will be uploaded. So what the college did was that on their VLE or LMS, they uploaded the videos, and they asked the students that at least they should be present on the VLE for the downloading time and things like this. And this is how they were monitoring their learning. So this is regarding the teaching, that sending out CDs and then having the asynchronous component, that we can less have a recording, but then also have the recording uploaded, or the MS Teams recording. It's the link is shared. The MS Team links just pops into your email, so you receive the link for the online teaching session. Regarding the assessment, that's the most trickiest one, because again, this issue of fairness comes in. So one of the suggestions that we are right now working on, and which is quite challenging for us at the moment, is that because the hostels are locked down, and we cannot even open up the hostels if we want to call in the students from peripheries for the examinations, because in some of the hostels the students, they share rooms. So one of the suggestion is that we are working on that we have to space the exams. So all the exams, usually we used to have the exams all together, but now we are going to space up the exams, first professional, then second professional, then third professional, so the hostels rooms can be utilized and the college space can be utilized. So the online exam is not an option for the assessment of the professional exams. We are going for the physical presence of the students, uh, because of obvious reasons of internet connectivity and technology issues that we don't have, and connectivity. So we have to go for the physical presence. Another option that we are working on is that the students from, let's say, if we have students who are studying in Aptabad, but they live in Peshawar or they live in Swat, they don't need to go to Aptabad for the hostel utilization. The university, they should arrange with their roll numbers with the students of Peshawar, maybe Khyber Medical College, or with Sethi Medical College in Swat, or if the student is from Banu and he is studying Ahmedabad, so he should be accommodated for the examination purposes in Banu, so that the student does not need to leave their home for the hostel, and they can have the exams within their home city. So these are some of the options. And similarly, for the students of FATA, the closest college that should be given as an option to them. So this is another suggestion. So one is the spacing of exams. Another one is that the students should be accommodated closest in the medical college. So so it will not be now a college exam. It will be the whole university will be just one college, and it will be just the exam centers, just like ETA exam centers, that they can go to the closest exam center that is closest to their home. So this is another option that we are looking into. So these are the two options, and there were some other options, but I cannot think of them right now. I can share them later on if someone is interested in what the KMU policy is, and I can share it with them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Usman. Dr. Shams, would you like to ask a question you just mentioned?
I just want to pick brains here from all the four panelists and the participants as well, because this is a collective learning experience. As Dr. Rehan talked about proctoring, and Dr. Usman has also talked about invigilation kind of a thing, that can go local center. Can we think about and we talk about think tanks and we think about PMDC and all that, can we suggest at some point the medical education is that we use the local resources that are present in the student's hometown? I'll give you an example. Like if a student is sitting in Ladakana and he is going to sit an exam in JSMU. Now, can JSMU connect not on their own through somebody to a local educational setup? Let it be, an intermediate college, a degree college, where that student can go locally, and JSMU can remotely run that exam from their Moodle setup, and the invigilation or the proctoring is actually done at the local level. Is that a possibility? Ji, Dr. Moin. Anybody?
Thank you. There's what Usman is really saying is that a physical on-campus exam is being considered in KP. The situation in Sindh is very different. So I think it's a provincial issue. In Sindh, we have written document notice from the provincial health ministry saying that on campus physical examination is just out of the question. So we cannot think of it. It has to be remote. Now, if we take Dr. Shams, your idea, that is still a student going to a campus, whether it's in Ladkana or anywhere else. That itself is not allowed in Sindh. So, it's a legislation issue as well, which seems to be different in different provinces.
I think when UHS tried to take an exam and they were stopped by
yes, exactly.
maybe things might change.
But they have now been allowed to take their supplementary examination for nursing as well as MBBS, only the final prof examination, because they were the students who were going to enter into medical services immediately afterwards. I think, yeah.
Dr. Usman, you would like to say something?
I think Dr. Junaid is very right. What happened was we had two supplementary exams. UHS was having its supplementary exam, KMU was having its supplementary exam. What our controller did was that he asked the higher education department, the health department, he took permission from them and also from all the relevant authorities from the health department. Whereas I think UHS went directly for the exam without having a proper approval from the management bodies and the government. So what happened was that with KMU, we did not have any issue. We went with our exam because we already had our approvals. Whereas UHS got in trouble because they didn't get proper approval from the government. But what then later they did was that they did the same thing. They also got approval from the government. And once the government approved with proper SOPs and everything, so then they were allowed for the exam. So same is what we are also going to do for our even physical exam. Because I think yesterday you would have read in the newspaper that PMNDC, all the vice chancellors in the PMNDC, they told the council that let us allow to take our exams and let us decide ourselves. So PMNDC yesterday, I think said, and it was in the news, that the universities should decide themselves about their examination strategy, and PMNDC is not going to limit them. So probably Dr. Moeen is very right that the situation and context is so different. So our exams are actually going to be in September onwards in KP, all the professional exams. So we hope so that the situation by September onwards, we may be able to manage it. And the third option that I was forgetting was, I think we discussed it during the discussion, was that take the clinical exams as I gave an example of 15 years back, when we used to have the professional exams, two professional exams together, IENT in final year, first prof exam actually taken at the end of second year. So this is the third option that we are also looking into, that the clinical exams may be taken next year when the situation may settle down.
I would like to add Ahsan to this. You see, I mean, whether the universities allow it or not, what we need to take into account is that what is the slope of the COVID-19 pandemic. So at the moment, it's not flattening. So if it's not going, it's not being flat, that would mean that we still have a very high chances of our students acquiring COVID-19 infection when they go on campus. You know, as you're aware that WHO defines that social distancing is at least maintaining a 6 feet distance and wearing masks. So do you think that when you conduct these exams on the campus in such a situation, would you be able to do that? That is a very pertinent question, because after these exams are being held, and then God forbid, few of these students become COVID positive, what would be the impact then? So we need to take this into account, that unless until we have, at the moment we're having like 5,000 to 6,000 new cases per day, which are reported new cases per day. So unless until it drops down to less than 500 or 300, something like that, which is actually happening now in the European countries, which are thinking of opening the universities and schools, this would be very tricky and dangerous.
I have a question. There was a discussion going on internationally that once a final year exam happens, the student automatically becomes a house officer or a foundation year doctor, and he's expected to deal with patients directly. So if we are expecting after an exam a student to deal with patients directly, why can't we have final year exams on the patients directly beforehand, just 1 month?
Okay. I mean, there have been two viewpoints regarding that. That this is an ideal situation where the medical students should be exposed to such students because they'll have a lot of learning. We don't know that we may have more pandemics like this in the future, but we currently don't have enough PPEs, proper PPEs for our doctors, which are front liners. Uh, do you think we would be able to provide the environment to our students? At the moment, actually, I'm also involved in one of the studies which we're doing at Rafa. We're trying to see the preparedness of the medical students and how much aware they are of having a clinical exposure to a suspected or a confirmed COVID-19 patient. So yes, we can do that, what you're saying, which is not being currently done probably in majority of the world, but then you need to have a lot of resources, a lot of training, and you have to be ready because when these students do their house jobs, we don't know yet that how many of them will be doing in which hospitals or not. So you have to have lots of resources and training for this purpose.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rehan. Dr. Muin, is open book method the only way for a CQ question, or there are other ways? Do you like to reflect on proctoring and other things as well?
Well, proctoring is of three types: live, online, and virtual, depending on how much money you can spend. So it's your choice. There's a buffet available, and Paisa Bek Tamasha Dek. It's there for you to choose. Student identification, student identity authentication softwares are also there, which your university can consider. So those issues can be resolved. Where an open book exam is concerned, actually, you see, if as we all know well, that an open book exam is meant for higher cognition. You don't have a recall level question for open book. So number one, I really don't think our faculty is geared for open book exams. They don't know how to make an open book exam. Our students have not been taught to respond to open book exams. So it would be highly unfair to land them in an open book exam situation, whether it is take home or timed in a high stake exam. So yes, there are possibilities where you have short essay questions or short answer questions, which you can answer online, and you have to time them, and you can shuffle the questions, you can keep the time short so that there's minimal cheating. So those are possible. But an open book exam has to be, we can't jump onto a new assessment tool just because HEC is recommending it. We have to think it through and plan it.
Thank you very much, sir. Dr. Junaid, I have a question from you. A lot of faculty is saying that we have fixed number of MCQs, and now when the college is asking us to go online, so we are putting all those MCQs online using different tools like Socrative and Kahoot. Now we have a fixed bank of MCQs, and there's a bigger chance that these questions will be recorded and we won't be able to use it in future. How are you handling secrecy issue with online assessment?
Well, those MCQs are well, like there's formative assessment going on and there's summative assessment going on now. Usually, in most of the institutions that we have, there is a pool of questions with every department that they use for formative assessment. And then the way we have structured question banking in our university is that those questions that are being used for formative assessment and then go through a process of psychometric analysis, and then they get pooled, come over to the university's examination department and our assessment unit, where they go through another set of psychometric analysis and then get pulled into the bank. When we use them at the level of the university, we use them so students do not actually have they cannot really download it. But there are obviously there are issues. They might have they can copy them from the screen, like they can just take screen pictures and then they have them there, and then or they can just take pictures of them, or they can recall them and then write them down again. But what we are trying to do here is through various institutions and trying to get all our faculty involved in developing questions, that the content that students need to go through, or in order to pass an examination, that is limited. So there can only be an n number of questions that can be, or n number of topics that you can set questions on, and you can have various questions that can with different wordings that can be asking the same thing, but they are finite. They cannot be infinite. And if you have a huge enough bank, it really doesn't matter how much of that, how many of those questions are actually out there, and as long as the students can go through them, that's part of their learning as well. So we're trying to develop a credible, huge bank at NUMS, and we're trying to use as much technology as possible to ensure that they do not get out there unnecessarily to where they're not supposed to.
Thank you very much, sir. One question for all the panelists, anyone who would like to answer. So we have been assessing cognitive skills easily. I think a lot of people are asking questions about psychomotor domain and affective domain. So can you people share your experience about it, and the involvement of friends and families for examination in online assessment? How do you see that? So,
you see, regarding the psychomotor skills, I already mentioned in my introductory talk that when we talk about OSCE or OSPE, it's not only about the hard psychomotor skills only. So we do say OSCE is about information taking, which is history taking. It is about information giving, which is breaking bad news counseling. It is about solving complex problems, which means critical thinking. It is also about assessing soft skills, like reading a chest X-ray, reading a CT scan, or doing spotting in anatomy. And then this is also about so these are the different aspects apart from the psychomotor skills. So if you can assess these four aspects, you are to some extent assessing the clinical competence of a medical student. What you're left with is the psychomotor skills. So it depends that if you are teaching them in this COVID pandemic the skills, which means, like, for example, if your medical school is providing them with low fidelity simulators, the ones which could be easily made in your own university and then distributed, like suturing skills, or maybe giving an IV line injection, which you're demonstrating on an IV line tubing to a student, and then he can re-demonstrate it to you when you're doing it online. So there is a list of low fidelity, there's a list of psychomotor skills which you can do on low fidelity simulators. We are in the process of identifying those skills as well. And looking into the future, we hope that the curve flattens, and then we can call students in small groups. This is already in our plan, that we will arrange areas where we will call students, and we'll at least try to teach them the clinical skills on mannequins till we have a full environment and the proper PPEs in which we can actually expose them to patients who are either suspected COVID or COVID positive patients. Thank you.
thank you, Dr. Rehan. Dr. Muin and Dr. Junaid, would you like to say anything?
While Dr. Muin is turning on his mic, can I say a few things about it? You can turn on your mic, Dr. Muin, in the meantime. That's fine. I think I fully agree with Professor Rehan. And again, last year I think it was in Surina that I gave a presentation on the various tools, virtual tools that are available that for education as well as on assessment, and there even for high fidelity examination. But the point remains that it is difficult contextually and based on the type of Wi-Fi we have and the accessibility people have to actually administer those tools. But we'll probably get there. But in the meantime, Professor Rehan is absolutely right. What about those mannequins that we have in those clothes stores that they can be used, and students can be monitored doing abdominal examination on those those very cheap mannequins that are available on those clothes markets or some other tests. But the majority of the skills are really assessed based on the cognition that is related to the skills. As a surgeon, Professor Rehan would second me that nobody asks us to do surgery or to put a CV line in or actually do a tracheostomy. They ask us the steps of those procedures and then they take us off. All right, he knows the steps, so he's competent enough to be passed in those FCPS or FRCS examinations or even in final professional examinations. So compromises have to be made because an exam has to be feasible and have an educational impact as well, and education needs to go on. So yes, I think we can, this is an opportunity that we can actually engage educational technologists like Professor Rehan, even Masood Javed. I don't see him here today, but and they're very excellent. I think Professor Rehan should also tell us about that MOOC that he administers, and the program is going to start from the 15th of July. I'm really interested in that program, and I think people should actually enroll in that program, and it will be a great learning experience for them as well. So develop educational technologists in your universities and try new things.
I will just add on to what Professor Junaid said. You see, when we started medical education, say almost a decade ago, people would say that they are teachers by default. So we had to bring in this concept that, no, it's not like you have to have a license to teach. So then, the concept of having certificate in teaching and masters in teaching. Now, majority of the teachers, what they're lacking is that how to, tackle with this technology. Like, can they actually resolve issues with Moodle? Can they make their courses on the authoring tools? So to make a teacher at least handle all these basic things which they need to do, I and Masood, we have designed a course which is called as CODE, which is Certificate of Online and Distance Education. It's a 6-month certificate. And the main purpose of this certificate is to educate teachers in handling all these issues. So as Junaid said, you can actually go on to a website. I'll write that in the chat box, and if you're interested, you can do that course as well.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rehan. Dr. Muin, you would like to say something before we wrap up?
I agree with what Dr. Rehan said about the OSCE, the idea behind OSCE, that it's really testing the higher cognitive things that he said. Some higher cognitive functions are dependent on psychomotor skills, like physical examination. So those you can't keep. That's the bottom line. The others can be kept through simulations, through videos, and all. So we really need to know what is possible and what is not possible. And then there's the policy of, do you want to graduate a doctor without having a psychomotor skill assessed and judged? So, it's the university's policy. Plus, the university should consider guidelines that come from PMDC. Sooner or later, they will come. So, we have to know the limitations. Some things are just not possible online.
Thank you very much, Dr. Muin and Dr. Rehan, Dr. Usman. I think we had a good discussion on different assessment methods for cognitive domain, psychomotor domain, as well as affective domain. We have discussed open book exams, SEQs, simulated patients, proctoring, remedials, and even we are looking forward for a PMDC policy to give us standards and guidelines on the issue. For vote of thanks, I would like to invite Dr. Kashif Ikram, who is the principal for Baqai Dental College. So over to you, Dr. Kashif Ikram. Dr. Kashif.
जी जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम.
Walaikum assalam.
I'm really grateful on behalf of the management of Baqai Medical University, the vice chancellors, registrar, all deans and principals, head departments, all professors. I think it was a very, very, very great session, and I thoroughly enjoyed. I could not even sneak for 1 second. I was so engaged in all of your really learned conversations. But my concern remains the same from the student perspective. And one thing I really agree with Dr. Rehan, okay, we need to teach our teachers. And this is the problem in our society. If we start teaching our teachers, they don't accept the reality that they're not the default teachers. So we need to work on this event. I agree with that. I'm really grateful to our hosts and coordinators, Dr. Ann, Dr. Shams, and certainly our dear friend, Dr. Ahsan. After Dr. Ahsan's joining our guest faculty, it's been a great change and improvement, and so is Dr. Shams. And I'm very honored by these two honorable teachers and faculty members. Okay, Baqai Dental and Medical College, and very soon the pharmacy and IT is going to learn how to teach effectively online as well. They have done a great job, certainly, on bearing all the young and the old blood. It's not easy. Our students also have gone through a session of teaching. I hope and suggest and pray that PMDC should come up with a nice conversation document जिसमें हमें ये पता हो कि प्रिस्क्रिप्शन प्रिस्क्राइब डॉक्यूमेंट मिल जाए ताकि हमें गाइडलाइन मिले हम काम कर सकें. So in the end, I like to thank you all, and Mike over to Dr. Ahsan, Dr. Shams to you.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a great session for me, at least personally. As Dr. Kashif Ram has thanked, I would specifically like to thank a few people. There's always a few people in the front, but there's a larger group sitting at the back. The IT support, our media partners, and especially the management professor Zaida Baqai has been the forefront, the vice chancellor, and Dr. Shoaib Baqai, director planning, who has been helping us with all these resources and everything. To me, this is in a nutshell been a master class. It's not a webinar, it's a master class in which we have